Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another Family Office Insights webinar. We're super happy and excited to have Scout with us today. And big shout out to my dear friend and super smart guy, Alex Fredericks, who has introduced me to Scout. And as many of you may know, we've been friends for a long time, and he's got really interesting opportunities that he works on, and this is one of them. So we're super happy to have them. And I think that many of you may have scheduled this in a prior time that totally my fault that we missed, but we're here today. And as we go through the presentation today, if there's anybody that you think of that would benefit from hearing what you hear today, you're super welcome to share it with them, as well as be in direct contact with the Scout Group principals post-webinar. We'll also be recording this, and so if there's others that want to see the recording, it'll be posted on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel, and then we'll send the link separately in any event. So with that, thanks everybody as usual for joining us today. And as I said, feel free to share any thoughts that you have with your colleagues that might benefit from this. And also, you can post your questions as we go along, and please do that as they come to mind so we can get to as many as possible. And we'll answer them online here. So with that, John, you want to do a short intro and then go around the room?
Sure. John Dunavan, and I'm Director of Learning Technology for Scout. I'm CEO of the Learning Community as a Service platform. I spent 25 years in applied learning science, doing commercialization of National Academy of Sciences and National Science Foundation research for global learning challenges. My own history includes work with state and federal government, including investigations and development of programs for at-risk populations, specializing in wide variety of strategic challenges. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Schuster.
I'm Dr. Richard Schuster. I'm a clinical psychologist, CEO of a mental health technology platform, and host of the Daily Helping podcast, which is downloaded in 150 countries. My expertise lies in clinical interventions with respect to crisis response and trauma. We'll tell you more a little bit later. Raymond, I'm going to pass it to you.
Good afternoon, Raymond Cardinelli. I am the Director of Operations for Scout. And what I've done for the past 20 years is behavioral change. We own a behavioral change company that goes into organizations, finds out what they want for the outcome, and then shows people how to tactically grow there through engagement and measurement. And we're excited to be here, and you'll find out a little bit more as we go through this.
Thanks.
Great. Alex, you want to say something or no?
Thank you all very much for joining us today. I hope that this connects with you in a meaningful fashion. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody. All right, John, you want to take it away?
Sounds great. Thanks again for accepting our invitation to learn more about Scout and our mission to bring acceptance, knowledge, skills, and support to people in need and their families. Our team has been fortunate to develop custom solutions for behavior change, personal support, and strategic learning projects around the world for over 2 decades. SCOUT's an acronym. It describes our key features and outcomes, which are support, collaboration, observation, understanding, and transformation. Scout is a SaaS, software-based, scalable, and proactive support system built for veterans, service members, and first responders at risk of stress and trauma responses. Scout identifies and both passively and actively addresses emotional distress, including anxiety, depression, substance use disorders, PTSD, and suicide risk. It combines smart technology and real human connection to reach people early before they enter crisis stages. We chose the name Scout because people want and need a guide, a competent and reliable source of wisdom, experience, and hope to help survivors, their families, and peers create personalized paths to wellness, to thrive more than just survive. Everyone on this call has experienced, personally or through family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances, the disruptive power of unmanaged mental health conditions. Each of Scout's founders, who are leaders within their industries, has a personal reason for finding each other and joining forces to develop a solution that actually works. Here's my personal reason. This image that you're seeing now reminds me of my brother and our efforts to help him. My brother and I were close in age and interests. After I became a rescue squad captain and training officer in college, he became a paramedic. When I went into government service as an investigator, he joined the Army Reserve. I moved on to develop continuum of care systems for at-risk populations, including mental health, physical health, housing, education, and legal services. When 9/11 happened, I was a government contractor developing population health solutions. This included an online platform that helped mass casualty event first responders plan for previously unimaginable forms of disaster impacting hundreds and thousands of people. Tools that help first responders perform better in their jobs without following their natural impulse to abandon their post and just go home. And then to manage their own stress and trauma in collaboration with their peers and families. When 9/11 happened, my brother's unit was activated. Because he was a seasoned paramedic, an experienced coach to junior combat medics, his CO said, "I don't want to go into battle without you." He spent 2 tours with the 10th Mountain in the hill country of Afghanistan, where some of the most intense and prolonged fighting occurred. He would nap in medevac helicopters as they took him from firefight to firefight. He was amazingly well protected and appreciated by his unit. They even had pizza airlifted by helicopter to his location to keep him fed during back-to-back missions. But no one knew the toll the events they were experiencing would take on my brother or the rest of their unit. While overseas, his wife divorced him, sold his car, took their house, and gained sole custody of their daughter. Around that time, during his last tour, we began to lose contact with him. His contact dwindled to 0. But we knew that contacting his command for a welfare check would negatively impact his military career. After his tour, we didn't know that he'd returned to the States. He simply appeared one day, but he was a different person. He experienced daymares and night terrors and was prone to drifting off mid-sentence. Later, we learned that he was self-medicating with the drugs he was qualified to manage and dispense. He returned to the community where his ex-wife and daughter lived, but was unable to reconnect. Although highly qualified, he couldn't maintain a job in the healthcare sector in a region desperate for providers. Then one day, he was hospitalized for a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was a suicide attempt that he rethought, and then the pistol discharged into his leg. I had experience with at-risk populations, entitlement programs, government services, military affairs, law enforcement, and the mental health and physical health sectors, and was a DoD contractor for Army intelligence. My wife was a deputy inspector general for governmental healthcare programs, including Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance programs. We thought we knew how to get him the help he needed from the systems designed to support people just like him. But the more services we accessed, the more frustrated we became. Everything was at capacity. No therapists, no specialists, no beds, no outpatient. There's law enforcement activity, there's court dates. We wondered how people with a fraction of our experience had the knowledge, time, or money to build and maintain a care plan. And simply put, they don't. And I know that our experience is not unique. As a team, we drew upon these experiences to begin assembling the requirements and functionality for the Scout solution. The data points on the slide speak for themselves. These are the grim statistics that our military family experienced, but it's not just us. This is what transitioning looks like today. This is what hundreds of thousands of individuals in many high-stress occupations and their families experience. In the absence of the skills to recognize the onset of mental health conditions or to take action, problematic coping skills take over, such as interpersonal conflict, isolation, guardedness, substance abuse, and suicidality. These challenges impact the ability for survivors to leave their home, find and maintain employment, and perform their missions. Once these challenges are identified, the existing support systems are not able to provide timely assistance because they are overwhelmed by the volume of need, understaffed, and ill-equipped to respond to the variety and depths of needs. Traditional therapy and intervention are an important but small part of the needed solution. We've had a brief introduction. We can skip over this, but you've heard my story and a little bit of Dr. Schuster and Raymond. Do you all want to go any deeper than our original comments?
I would like to say my why, because it's kind of how we got here. So when I was working as a private clinician in the Atlanta area, my role and responsibility with the state of Georgia was that the state would rescue child sex trafficked children, women that had been domestically abused, and they would say to me, Dr. Schuster, build us a roadmap to bring these people back to health, to put them back together, which was a big responsibility. And I did that for many years. But my frustration within that system was that so many of the tools that are the gold standard tools in that space are very pejorative in nature. They're negative. They rubber stamp people as a disorder, and they don't really have anything foundationally upon which you could build upon, highlighting people's gifts. And this got to a point where I actually reached out to the leadership who created one of these tests and told them how much better their instrument could be if it just focused even a little bit on strengths. And they laughed me off the phone. And they said to me, Dr. Schuster, there's no money in strengths. To which I said, okay, I'll do it myself. And that's when I recruited Dr. Garrison, who couldn't be here today because he's our director of clinical content. And Dr. Garrison and I began creating predictive algorithms that could not only identify how people's functional difficulties with respect to mental health are impacting them in the real world, but also can give them that base upon which they could stand to build themselves up. And that's important because as we were doing that, we identified a gap in the marketplace. We acquired a trauma treatment system for veterans and first responders that had been used on over 10,000 active duty soldiers. And we knew we had a great platform to help people who are in acute distress. But the gap in the marketplace, the question we asked ourselves was, what if we could develop a system using technology that enabled people to get a handle on their mental health before they entered crisis, before they became addicted to drugs or alcohol, or before they became suicidal? And that's what led me to Scout. Raymond, I believe you wanted to say something.
Raymond Cardinelli, as I said earlier. Yeah, so I was born in the Bronx, New York, so I learned early on how to negotiate and get through situations. So the behavioral piece was in my DNA growing up. Had blue collar parents, never graduated high school. They taught me about work ethic and how to just work every day and do good. First one to go to college in my family. Got to college, realized I didn't have any money, so I learned how to start businesses to create revenue so I could pay for college. And then a really good thing happened to me. I got out of college and started working for Xerox back when they were still the best of the best. And they not only taught me the communication and how to sell, they taught me how to build processes and measure efficiencies. Processes stay, people leave. And that was a guiding light for my career and all the success I've had. About 20 years ago, I started a company in the behavioral change business, which I told you earlier. So we go into organizations and try to find out what the outcome they want is. And then we put programs in place that are tactical and easy to measure and easy for people to engage to change behavior. And about 4 years ago, I met Richard and John kind of simultaneously, and they were experts in what they were doing. And together we made a really good team. So we had a couple projects we worked on. But like Dr. Schuster said, once we saw the gap in the behavioral health business here, we kind of said, hey, we got something. We got some proven techniques. Let's kind of pull together. And that's kind of how the vision of Scout started. So we are pulling together all these things. The other thing that I got really good at, and that was because I was trained really well, is how to pull 5 or 6 different pieces together to align for one common goal. So one of the roles I have with Scout is to kind of pull all these ancillary products, which you're going to hear about, and put it into one solution and make sure that it's doing everything we want to do. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to talking to you even more. John, back to you.
Thanks. Let's roll on.
So, John, I don't mean to interrupt, but the thing
Please.
that fascinated me the most about what you're doing, and I don't mind saying that, so if I'm going down the wrong path, just tell me, was how you identify and get people into the system, into your program before the crisis happens. Because I think that was one of the things that fascinated me when Alex started talking to me about this and when we had our conversation. So I suspect you're going to get to that, but I think that's important if you're at some point going to address that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we're delighted to go deep on that too during question and answer. But briefly, because we've all had so much experience working state, federal, international government agencies, we have a lot of great relationships to call upon. And as soon as we describe to key stakeholders what we're doing and how we do it, It fits so well with a make sense model that they've been trying to do interpersonally, but just could never scale with technology, that we have people, jumping to join us. We had a conversation yesterday with two retired brigadier generals and a colonel, and they wanted to sign up immediately. They've offered all their resources and contacts, and we're scheduling meetings in DC beginning the middle of August to follow up. So we have many entry points. Getting folks in is not a challenge at all. It's really helping getting in the position to scale adequately. That is the challenge that the short term but achievable challenge that we have ahead of us.
Great. Thanks for that.
You bet. Thanks for your question. So the data points in the slide kind of speak for themselves. The awareness of connections. Mind and body are solely focused on survival when that level of mental illness and challenge happens. This state of mind creates a false but powerful sense of loneliness and isolation. 50% of suicides are driven by loneliness. A state of mind that's powerful enough to separate people from their families, friends, peers, and work colleagues. Research into the needs of veterans returning to civilian communities demonstrates that the lack of connection, that overpowering sense of loneliness, elevates a wide range of risks, including suicide. A strong support network is an essential ingredient to any effective solution, and strong support networks double the likelihood of recovery. Scout begins with connection. Access to qualified therapists is important, but connections to family and peers is vital. Sooner or later, everyone wants to go home. In our model, connections are structured and facilitated within a support community. We use guided discussions to describe the everyday challenges, common events, and circumstances that we take for granted that are potentially disruptive for people who have experienced stress and trauma. These guided conversations help veterans, their families, and peers to anticipate, prepare for, and learn from activities of daily living, such as spending time with family, employment, social events, and actively participating in therapy. Now, Scout is a technology-enabled, not driven solution. Our technology is entirely focused on creating and sustaining connection and monitoring those connections to determine strengths and needs. Our connective technology wraps a network around each person, connecting them on our platform with family, peers, clinicians, and mentors who are prepared to support them on their healing journey. It builds upon strengths to produce resilience through an intuitive, proactive intervention model that builds individuals' skills specific to their stress and trauma exposure. It recognizes the onset of acute needs, working with the VA, military, service agencies, families, and care teams using empirically derived assessments on biometric data to establish baseline functioning. It listens closely and responds through intelligent tools, wellness check-ins, wearable devices, and personal interaction and personalized assessments that spot warning signs and offer immediate support. And finally, it acts as a force multiplier, building upon and integrating, supplementing any form of localized support services. The Scout model works. We take what works at the individual level, connection, community, acceptance, awareness, skill building, support, assessment, and intervention resources, and scale it through technology. It begins with reconnection, enabling people to re-enter their community and practice the skills needed to manage the challenges they will experience along their path to productive lives. Now, not all technology is created equal. There are many, many AI technologies that have been applied to mental health challenges and famously failed, providing participants with false, destructive, and dangerous information and recommendations. We judiciously use AI and machine learning in a closed-loop model. Our technology gathers the insights, experience, recommendations generated by humans to learn what works and build a knowledge base for others. Our technology is used to supplement the ideas of our participants. We help individuals create and iterate personalized plans of action that are collaboratively implemented, monitored, and adjusted. Imagine crowdsourcing across communities, states, and countries. Lessons learned, what works and what doesn't, are gathered and easily shared to be iterated by others within networks of their own. So to Arthur's question, organic growth comes with them all. Good data drives great outcomes. We are uniquely able to study all of the ingredients of our participating veterans, their families, and peers' challenges, such as type of event, personal history, culture, language, and individualized stressors. We learn what works under what circumstances, and then safely share that knowledge across other personalized networks. We're generating the first data set with a holistic view of the impact of stress and trauma on individuals, their family, and community. We can provide dashboard views that describe how individuals, their family, and peers experience stress and trauma in near real time. We're able to examine the efficacy of interventions, detail solutions that work, and describe healthcare marketplaces in terms of resource utilization and needs. Scout brings success to scale. Current solutions are primarily tactical and limited in their scale. They are limited in scope, focused primarily on an individual. They are limited in availability, relying on interpersonal, on-site interaction at the time and place of the provider. And they are limited in connection. They separate people from the support systems needed to foster and maintain progress. Scout uses technology to connect people within a community that includes their support systems and interventions, wherever and whenever they are needed. Now, how does this actually work? We've got a pretty cool slide to show you. Dr. Schuster's going to walk us through it.
Yeah, don't be intimidated. There's a lot here, but I'm going to walk us through it at a high level and it all makes sense. So this is a visual as to how the Scout ecosystem helps people thrive. So as a SaaS platform, Scout is uniquely able to integrate people, products, and services in hyperlocal networks dedicated to a single user success. We call this the subway map because it describes the journey that Scout participants take, be them survivors, their families, peers, and interventionists. They all take this together. It's got an entry point, a goal-based path, and periodic stops and sidetracks where highly individualized assessments and clinical interventions occur. So let's look at the top. Here at the top, we represent the foundation of the individual's personal network. It's pre-populated in Scout, and it combines family, friends, peers, and interventionists just specific to the individual. It feels like it's built just for them because it really is. Now, more people can be added by the members as the network's need for support evolves. How do you get into Scout? So the gateway to Scout is literally any web-enabled device. Scout is designed to scale and work on screens of all sizes. So let's shift to the right side of the map. Here we see the provisioning of bioacoustic services that are scientifically proven to reduce stress and aid with relaxation and sleep. We're also integrated with an unpowered, waterproof branded Scout bracelet that supports touchless access to the platform. John's showing one. I don't know if you could see it, but you just literally tap onto the platform, and this enables communication and best-in-class monitoring. What's really cool about this component of our solution was recently certified as one of 7 Microsoft-accredited AI health tools. Not one of 7 in Seattle, one of 7 globally. So Scout's biometric monitoring system, it taps physical measures of stress, anxiety, and 20 other critical health indicators, all done via a smartphone or tablet that a user already has. The platform's hub and spoke model enables the integration of a wide range of product and services, including new wearable technology and alternative interventions that may be non-traditional or experimental. Assessments for the survivor and the members of their network provide insights on the individual as well as group strengths and needs. Indicators of increasing risk trigger specialized assessments, and these may be used to summon interpersonal assistance, specific therapeutic interventions, as well as acute care, such as if one becomes suicidal or there's a high risk for substance abuse. But to talk a little bit about the background. In the background, our systems are developing individualized participant profiles using the AI that John talked about a little bit ago that track how each individual experiences and expresses stress and trauma responses. Because like a fingerprint, everybody is different as they experience trauma. So these profiles then support individualized, tailored interventions, and these can anticipate positive and negative trends, triggering appreciation or rewards, or activating caution signals and closer monitoring. Let's shift gear to the left side of the map. On the left side of the map, we see a wide range of features integrated into the Scout platform. Now, this particular subway map that we're showing you today, this was designed for Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. So some of the features are tailored to the military and VA missions. And I'm going to take us on a tiny sidetrack. It's also worth noting that while we've been predominantly speaking about addressing trauma, we have an alternate version of Scout for active duty personnel to foster rapid redeployment as well as increasing soldiers' performance and proficiency in the field. But whether we're talking about active duty personnel or veterans, building and maintaining mental and physical health peak performance is not unique to them. There's other organizations we've been asked to assist with, such as medics, firefighters, police, survivors of human trafficking. All of these have personal needs for stability in their lives, including homes, families, communities, and their place of employment. Our intuitive story-based approach, underpinned by an empirically driven framework, promotes engagement, helps survivors and their networks of family and peers recognize the signs and symptoms of mental health challenges, and it invites them into a psychologically safe space to observe, practice, and share effective supports and interventions. These story-based guided discussions help participants recognize their personal strengths, needs, and weaknesses. And if any of you have any questions of this, we can drill down into this later in the Q&A. John, I'm going to shoot it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Schuster. In summary, Scout helps survivors, their families, and friends make sense of stress and trauma. Unmanaged stress and trauma are a community challenge that can only be solved through community. Scout guides individuals with trauma exposure to their new normal. Scout builds upon local and national services without competing. We are seeking investment of up to $3 million against a valuation of $15 million. Raymond, I'll let you go deep on that.
So thank you, John. Thank you, Richard. So we put some numbers together, Tam and Sam numbers, which we can go deeper on individually if you're interested, for first responders, law enforcement, and the military, active, reserves, and veterans. But let me throw a couple other numbers at you. The global mental health tech market is between $5 and $7 billion today. They're anticipating that to grow to $18 billion by 2032. The mental health software sector, they're anticipating growing to $30 billion by 2032. And then the U.S. behavioral health, which is software and services, is an $83.5 billion market right now, and they're expecting that to grow to $135 billion by 2032. So this isn't a niche. This is really a global imperative. And we can go deeper on the numbers as you need to. So we have two paths, John, could go for that we're asking for investors. The first path is to partake in the revenue. Since we're a subscription-based licensed product, you can partake in every time we sign a subscriber up, there's a monthly fee. You can be part of that. So that's the first path. The second path is a standard convertible note. We've sent these things out to you guys before, but we can talk deeper. Obviously, you guys have a way that you like to invest, so we'd like to talk any way that works for you and works for us. We would like to partake with you. But before I go any further, let me just give you a little bit of what's in our funnel, because we've been working on this for about a year and a half. We're actively working with the Seminole Nation and First Nations on initiatives aimed at supporting at-risk communities. Through our strategic engagement with a top-tier Washington lobby group, we're also in discussions with the Department of Defense regarding a new Veterans Village program. That is a transitioning program for when you come out of the services, how you get into civilian life. And we believe that could bring thousands of veterans to us to Scout in the coming year. In the U.S., we're advancing conversations with the Fire Department of New York and the National Firefighters Union to bring Scout to the first responders. We'll show you the advisory board, but thanks to some of our advisory board members like Merrill Hemingway, we're also in early discussions with NASA on how Scout can support mental fitness of their personnel and affiliated communities. Internationally, we're working with a senior Israeli consultant to engage in key ministries, education, at-risk children, first responders, and health insurance to integrate Scout into a national program focused on trauma and resilience. We're also forging partnerships with some 501(c)s, both in the U.S. and abroad. In the U.S., we're talking with the Fletcher Group, which is a leading national nonprofit focused on addiction recovery and transitional housing. As John said earlier, the first week of August, we are going to DC. We have 14 appointments across various intergovernmental departments and organizations. These relationships and pilot programs collectively position us to onboard close to 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. On that team, besides the lobbyists, we have 2 generals, we have a colonel, and we have an ambassador. So we're getting with the right people for the right program. So with the strength of our pipeline and the urgency of need and the differentiation of our solution, Scout's well positioned to capture meaningful market share by 2027. We project valuation in the hundreds of millions of dollars built on scale, impact, and sustainable growth. So we invite you to join us on this journey, not only to do well, but to do well in scale. Thank you. John, back to you.
Thanks. So where's the money going to go? Scout is the integration of existing, mature, best-in-class products and services that have exclusively agreed to join our historic collaboration. Going to market will require finalizing some systems integration, staffing some operations, and formalizing marketing plans, and assisting with the continuing education accreditation for professionals who participate. Our system is designed so that it meets or exceeds online learning certification requirements for professional education, so we can offer that as a bonus to professional participants too. And we're happy to go to specific use of proceeds with each of you individually. Scout generates value through invaluable services. Scout's hub and spoke SaaS platform model was designed to foster collaboration among participants and their community of supports and interventions. We make money across every dimension of our ecosystem. Integrating products and services invites opportunities for revenue share. Content customization, specific to a partnering organization's constituency. Think cultural expressions of stress and trauma, unique subject matter expertise, language, and nuanced stress and trauma histories generate content production fees. Stress and trauma spreads faster and more easily than the measles. Building the first multi-generational, multi-dimensional database of anonymized survivor stories and intervention techniques implemented in collaboration with family, friends, and local professionals will give policymakers, provider organizations, and private equity the business case for resource allocation or reallocation. There's plenty of room at the table. Our unique value proposition, that is a scalable strategic solution for stress and trauma-related challenges for individuals and their personal networks, has made gathering stakeholders and advisors relatively easy. Here are a few of our initial collaborators, representing strategic relationships across government, industry, fire, EMS, police, and at-risk populations. This is just 4 of many. We have others across research institutions, provider organizations, and professional organizations around the world. We're actively gathering and formalizing relationships with key stakeholders at national, state, and local levels. And I mentioned earlier on yesterday's meeting, added 2 brigadier generals and a colonel specific to active duty, and a new DoD-funded veterans transition program that Raymond mentioned, solidified that yesterday. We anticipate participants on this call, folks that you may know, to reach out with suggestions for strategic or local advisors to join our effort. You know lots of folks who probably are interested in finding a way to help out these populations. We'd be delighted to chat with you about relationships. And finally, some context. If you'd like to continue the conversation later, here are some folks to chat with about scheduling time. Many thanks for your thoughtful attention, and we're ready for questions.
Great. Couple questions from the group. One, there was a question whether you deal with the Native American population, and the answer is yes, but could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we began conversations with Native American populations because this is a high trust business. We're dealing with individuals who are at some of the most challenging stages of their life. So this is not something you just jump into or buy off the shelf. What we do is we focus on how to create customized and localized solutions. So working with Native Americans means working with contractors within tribal organizations and tribal organizations directly, depending on what's the most efficient way to reach the audience. So most tribal populations don't actually live on the reservation, so we have a multiple angles to go after those groups. The Seminole Nation is one of the first ones that has approached us directly about a near-term model, and then from that turns into introductions with the First Nations within Canada as well.
And then subscription-based businesses are tough. What's
Yep.
the type of pushback which I imagine you have? Could you talk about the reception of the subscription-based business and how you've handled that and what the feedback has been like?
Absolutely. So we have had really nothing but enthusiastic support for our subscription-based model. What we do is because we do not have a one-size-fits-all solution, we're not setting one price and forgetting it. We work with individual organizations and constituent groups to adjust the pricing model that fits their needs and expectations and the size of their group as well. So for Department of Defense, we're looking at active duty personnel where the Department of Defense pays a subscription. And then as those individuals transition out of military service, those fees, however large or small they are picked up by a combination of family members, the individuals themselves, as well as charitable organizations and philanthropic organizations who want to support. But we also have ways to supplement that revenue through relationships with CMS, insurance providers, as well as philanthropic organizations. So we've cracked the code to some extent on how subscriptions work for at-risk populations, because often the at-risk populations themselves can't afford the full ticket. But it is important that they pay something for some degree of emotional and cognitive investment in the effort.
Sure.
And I'll add to that, John.
Go ahead.
I want to say that this solution is cheaper than 4 sessions of therapy a month, and when you're able to look at 4 50-minute sessions of therapy with somebody who maybe has a master's degree versus a 360 wraparound solution that is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and pulls those people most vital to the well-being of the user into the experience, it's something that's very compelling.
Well, let me add one thing to that, Arthur. So for 20 plus years, I've been in the subscription business. John has too. Richard does a little bit of too, what he offers. And subscription business has to be valuable, has to be engaging, has to be easy to use. And when you tie that to the community aspect that we talked about, so I'm getting something out of it. I got my community, I got my family, my peers, if it's a doctor, my doctor. But you have to make it easy for them to use. We're experts at that. And we've been doing subscription-based business for such a long time. We're very good at keeping people engaged by following behavior and understanding the at-risk population. So for us, that's a great question, but it's something we've mastered over the last 20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is my question, if you don't mind. Dr. Schuster and John, as it relates to the compelling reasons why you got involved, perhaps, John, you could talk about how this would have helped your brother, how this solution would have perhaps caused a different outcome. And Dr. Schuster, maybe, traffic people that were human trafficking and that sort of thing, or whatever other example you might want to use, how this would have maybe thwarted the outcomes that you saw normally.
Yep.
Applying Scout.
So we touched on. Thank you, Arthur. Great question. As we touched on earlier, the nature of mental illness is that it just hijacks your central nervous system and a lot of your physical and mental and emotional controls. So people do not think clearly because they're not often thinking broadly. Their focus becomes very, very narrow. With my brother's case, what we did there was we were creating a manual version of Scout. We were doing this with phone calls and visits and driving across the country and flying across the country and stationing relatives close by, and then working with clergy and counselors and and people who were care managers and case managers and VA representatives and law enforcement folks, all doing this high touch, driving around town and burning up the phone on the road. And in doing that, we thought, why isn't there a technical solution to do all these things?
Yeah, the analog version, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the analog solution only works as long as you're in the room. So if we can make something that's it's ubiquitous and omnipresent, the smartphone, everybody has a smartphone. If we can make this that the access point, and that becomes the place that people go as a base, and then has offshoots to high touch activities, then you really have something. And then working in collaboration with DoD, one of the challenges that the folks you have in military services, once you raise your hand and say, I've got a mental health challenge that I think I'm concerned about, or a family member says, I'm worried about John's mental health condition, all of a sudden that becomes very chilling for your career. But when DoD blesses this as a strength-based system that's solely focused on keeping people regulated and high performing and effective transition and lower risk as they leave the military service and enter communities, that's good for PR. It's good for people. It's great for families, and it's fantastic for veterans. And Alex, you raised your hand.
I raised my hand to actually double down on what you just said. So one of the points that we have in our conversation that I've been able to bring to the table is the bravado of the service provider, meaning the warrior in the field, the medic, the first responder, and they are taught compartmentalization. Put it away, deal with it later.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Scott allows is not just the peer-to-peer aspect of it, but the use of modern technology to lend a helping hand, to say to one of your troop members or one of your department guys, hey, why don't you check in on Alex? Hey, we've seen a pattern that Alex hasn't been, at the highest performance. Maybe you should check in on him, as opposed to Alex having to raise his hand and saying, hey, I don't feel good here. This isn't working for me. And when you can begin to build that trust, as John was saying earlier about the First Nations, when you can begin to build that trust internally, you have some domino effect towards success. So I just wanted to add that, because it is a question that we get when talking to the warrior class or the run into the raging fire people. They'll think about it later. I'll deal with it later. And well, when is later? When is later ever soon? Right. So it's a great question.
And for folks who have experience in the military or seen any popular military movie or television show, you're familiar with the concept of the buddy system. What we're doing is we're scaling the buddy system. People don't fight battles for themselves. They fight battles and engage in conflicts to benefit the person next to them and in collaboration with the person next to them. We're taking that very same mindset and model and amplifying that. So you don't have to be physically next to that person to have that same relationship and level of support.
And to your question, Arthur, as this relates to victims of child sex trafficking, one of the things that's exciting about Scout is that my company brought to Scout the clinical framework that is designed for the most treatment-resistant forms of trauma. And while it was designed for veterans with input from veterans' family members, there are universal biological aspects of trauma that apply to any population. But specifically where I think Scout would help with child sex trafficked people, or I'm thinking about how when I used to be in a crisis response team and I would show up at a school shooting after somebody had been killed. Yeah. It's not just the victim. What people don't realize immediately is that there is a cascade effect that impacts the family, the immediate family, the extended family, the community. So what Scout is doing is not only addressing the trauma, the individualized trauma of that individual, but providing a support for the family as well. So it's really collective healing. And it's such a powerful experience when all of a sudden a veteran who has had night terrors for 20 years gets their first good night's sleep because they've utilized part of the Scout platform. And all of a sudden their spouse says to them, oh my God, you weren't thrashing last night. And they wake up feeling refreshed. And as Alex had mentioned, so much of this is that peer. It's often the case that you'll believe a peer law, and think about when we were kids, right? We would believe our friends at school. We would never listen to our parents. And to a degree, that applies here. So when somebody is able to say to a fellow medic, to a fellow veteran, to a fellow soldier, oh my God, I did this thing with Scout and I'm sleeping better. Or their biometric data is showing improvements in their heart rate variability or some other factors. That's the power, because now you're engaging more people to jump on. And I'll also just add one quick thing. Who asked about the person that asked about the subscription platform? I've been in the SaaS world as well, and one of the things that's important about SaaS is you talk about, there's the concept of stickiness. That is, it's got to be sticky. It's got to have something that keeps people on the platform, is simple to use, and keeps people engaged. Well, as people dive deeper into Scout and engage in their network, engage in their peers, they're now empowered, because not only is their trauma being addressed, but they're helping their buddies' trauma. And we know through learning science that we know how people learn, and we know that people intrinsically are biologically predisposed to feel good when they help other people, right? And so I'm not going to bore you all with what neurotransmitters get released when we help people, but there are inherent things built into our platform to encourage collaboration between their peers as well as their family. Arthur, did that answer the question you were shooting for?
Totally makes sense. And we all know just from social media that peer endorsement is far more powerful than an ad, right?
Yep.
Just to put the other side of the continuum, right? The peers, somebody said, hey, you should watch White Lotus. That's you experienced, that their tastes are similar, then you're going to go do that more likely than if you saw it on Rotten Tomatoes, right? Something like that.
And that's one of the things that makes us really different in the market space, is our perspective is not that we are the experts or we have bottled the expertise and by golly, you should buy a drink. No. We're saying we're setting the table, and we may have a few well-placed food and bev items out there, but we're asking people to bring their own ingredients too, because they know far more about their veteran than we ever could. And so once we model what good looks like and give them an opportunity to share knowledge with each other, then all of a sudden, this isn't just a social passive experience. This is a social experience where you're in the club, and it's addictive. It's a lot of fun to be able to create solutions that help people. Just as a regular civilian helping my family member, I felt great helping my brother overcome a particular challenge. We're giving people the opportunity to do that within their own networks every day, all day long.
One of the things I told the generals yesterday when we met with them was that when I was a practicing clinician, what I would say to patients is, I have knowledge in mental health, but you're the expert in you. Only you understand your unique personal experience, what you've been through, the road that you've walked. And it was my job to take what I learned in 8+ years of schooling and in residency and translate that into tools that can help that individual access gifts within them to overcome adversity and become more functioning in society and overcome their trauma. That's basically what Scout's doing. We have clinical interventions that work. We have biometric data points where we are assessing and reassessing and using the machine learning in the background to track this data and all of the things that John mentioned throughout the presentation. But at its core, Scout is about people. Scout is about the real truth of who that person is, expressing where they need help and sharing their gifts with their peers. And it is a snowball effect. Like John said, it is addictive. And as more and more people start getting involved in this, that snowball starts rolling down that hill, picks up momentum, and more people get helped. And we're grateful to bring this to the masses.
Yeah, it totally makes sense to me. And also what makes sense is if you're at the ready with the Veterans Administration, for example, and when somebody's about to leave, then you don't have to wait till something goes wrong. You can engage them right away, and at least from, I don't know this to be true, but I imagine that when you get them right away, then they're more inclined to be engaged with something than if they're having trauma and they're, like you said, they have tunnel vision and they're saying, I can't be bothered with that. I got a problem
We-
here, right?
We will meet people where they're at, but as John said on the first slide, what's unique about Scout is we are a proactive, preventative solution. Our goal is to help people manage their mental health before they reach a level of crisis where they turn to drugs, alcohol, or God forbid, suicide.
Our contacts within DoD have suggested this becomes something that people use a year before they transition out.
That makes sense.
The military has a center and a school for absolutely every kind of military specialty, occupational specialty, but they don't have one for how to go home.
Yeah.
What they see in this is the recipe and a model for how people successfully learn how to go back home again. Because while their world has changed, they think that their home life has not. But that's not the case. Communities and homes and children and families all move on. And so how do you reintegrate people with that cold turkey? And it's very, very difficult. It needs to be something that's guided and escorted. It needs a scout to help people make that transition.
It totally makes sense. If you're away on what do you call it when you go away on a mission with the Army?
Deployment.
A deployment. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go away for 4 months, even 4 months, things have changed at home,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We live in a marketplace of mental health and physical health services that are really focused on products and services that are owned or controlled by a stakeholder, a drug company, a therapeutic group, a medical practice area. And what we're doing is we're not going to compete with those folks. We want to integrate all of that with a strategic perspective. So we can be agnostic. Using medication to help open the window for therapy, fantastic. We want to find out what the results are. How's your therapy going? Is this provider great? Excellent. We want to hear more about that. We want to see how all those pieces fit together and then get a 360 view from family, friends, and colleagues to say, wow, John's doing all those things, and this is how it's improving our level of interaction and our ability to problem solve with John. That's where we get data across all these different stakeholders that nobody has right now, just because we're not specific to a particular product or service.
Yeah, not conflicting. Yeah, totally makes sense. All right. Well, this has been awesome. Super appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
learned
Thank you
a
for
ton.
having us.
Yeah, you're
Thank you
very
very
welcome.
much.
I learned a ton more, and so did the audience, I'm sure. Like I said, we're going to make sure we share the recording with everybody that was RSVP'd, and then share it with the group in a wider way, and then make sure you guys have the recording as well. So, do you want to have a closing statement, anybody?
Thank you again for your time. We'll be delighted to chat with you. We can set up one-on-one conversations where we can actually show you a demo version of this system and a version of this system which is slightly detuned and focused on individuals who experienced human trafficking. We just finished a beta test in Indonesia and Singapore, and that will be expanding across Southeast Asia, all focused on how to help workplace teams and family members and individuals who experienced human trafficking reintegrate within the workplace. And their family. So we're happy to show you examples of how all these pieces fit together and work.
Yeah, great. Super appreciate that. And really nicely done, guys. Alex, thank you.
Thank you.
Raymond.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Sir. And as I always say, thank you for everybody for sharing with us. The only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. So till next time. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.